Hello, welcome to the next video. As you can see now, we've moved on from animals and we're looking at plants. And this is our other type of living thing. Okay, again, there's a couple of other ones that don't quite count as animals or plants. We'll look at those in the future. Okay, but plants, we can split into two main types. So, just like we split animals into vertebrates and invertebrates, we can split plants into two types. Okay, and they are flowering. Okay, I'm assuming you know what that means. Okay, we've got flowering plants, things that get flowers. Okay, so roses, daisies, things like that. Okay, and then our other type is just the opposite of that, so non-flowering. Okay, so this might be things like conifers. Okay, lots of trees. Okay, maybe some ferns, things like that are non-flowering. Okay, what we're going to focus on first is these flowering ones. Okay, so we're going to ignore non-flowering for now. We'll come back to that in the next one, and we're going to focus on flowering. Okay, and just like with invertebrates and vertebrates in animals, we could split that up into all the different types of vertebrate, like mammals and fish and so on. We can split flowering up, okay? But we split these up into just two groups, okay? So there's less different groups to remember for your flowering plants, okay? But the two groups will both be new words to us that we need to be very careful with spelling, okay? So our first one we're going to look at is, actually we'll just talk about both of them, okay? We've got Dicotyledons. Okay, so that's spelled Dicotyledons. It looks horrendous, and we pronounce that Dicotyledons. Okay, our other type, di, if you don't know, means two. So our other type, we call those Monocotyledons. Okay, and mono means one. Now, the big difference between these, the di and the mono, is basically to do with their seed. So a seed is basically a baby plant, okay? And so monocotyledon, that tiny little seed, only has like one leaf inside it. And a dicotyledon, that tiny little seed, has like two tiny little baby leaves in it, okay? That's the main difference in them. But when they grow up and they grow into full flowering plants, there's some more differences in them. Okay, but first off, let's just have a little chat about what we mean by flowering plants. Okay, so flowering plants are most of the plants we see around us day to day. Okay, they're the ones we're more used to because they're the ones we fill our gardens with. Okay, because they look nice, we like the flowers. But flowering plants use these flowers to reproduce, okay, and make seeds. They may do that themselves. They may do that through other animals. Okay, for example, bees coming to collect things from a flower to make honey. They collect something from a male flower, then they go visit a female flower to collect more nectar, and they drop off what they found at the male flower. And then that produces seeds, and we get more plants from that. Okay? So, that's how flowering plants work. They make these seeds. Okay? So, let's talk a bit about the different types then. We're going to focus first on a dicotyledon. Okay? So, I've got an example of a dicotyledon here, which I'll look at, okay? Unfortunately, it's winter, so it's not actually flowering at the moment, which isn't great, but we can still talk about some of the other bits of it that we need. Okay, so let me just disconnect my camera. Okay, so here we've got a dicotyledon. Got a little bit cold, okay, so it's going a little bit brown, but it will recover, okay, and you can see it would normally be flowering in these little flowers, but not at the moment. Okay, but we can have a look at the rest of it. Okay, so we know, I'm hoping, that this would be the leaf of it, okay? And it doesn't have any stems left on it at the moment, okay? So none of my flowering plants do, unfortunately. But stems would grow up from here with flowers on the end of them, okay? And then at the end of those stems, we'd get little buds before they became flowers, okay? But the biggest thing, and the easiest way to tell if a plant is Dicotyledon or Monocotyledon from looking at it, is by looking at the leaf. Okay, so let's look at this leaf here. And we can see a pattern on it really, really clearly. Okay, we can see there's a big vein running up it. Okay, and we do call that a vein. It's just like veins in our body or things like that. Okay, and then from that middle vein, we can see that there's lots of other ones coming off to the side, yeah? And then there's other little ones, if we zoom in, there's other little veins coming off these ones, okay? And so we get that pattern on the leaf of all these veins running in different directions, okay? And normally, or quite often, the leaves on a dicotyledon are quite broad, okay? They may be round even, or things like that, or quite wide. This one is fairly narrow, okay? But you can definitely see that pattern. So, I'm going to do a little sketch of what we need to know about a dicotyledon, showing some bits we need to be able to label and talk about, okay? So, dicotyledon, basically, you've got your stem coming up the middle, okay? Then you might have some leaves coming off it to the side like this, and yep, don't laugh at my artistic ability or lack of it. And then remember what those leaves looked like on the one I had. We've got a vein going up the middle like this, but we've got lots coming off to the side like this, okay? Maybe even some more little ones off in here as well, okay? But the main important bit is going up the middle with then things coming off on each side, okay? Then it needs something called buds, okay? And buds are what the new flowers grow from. So you might have little bits coming off like this with like a little thing on here that's closed up, okay? But will eventually open out into a flower, and then you'll have bits on your plant where flowers have actually opened up. Okay, so I'm going to draw a very bad flower here, okay, but you'll have bits where they have actually opened up, okay, and you've got your proper flowers growing on them, okay. So these, that is obviously your leaf. This would be your bud, okay, B-U-D. This would be your flower. Here, this big tall bit, that would be your stem, okay. And then underground, well, we know what plants look like underground, okay. They've got roots going underground, okay. What do those roots do? Why do they have them? Well, they spread out into the ground to look for nutrients, okay? Because just like animals need food to survive, so do plants, okay? Not necessarily food the way we think of it, okay? We'll go on to learn a bit more about that later on. But they have to get water, just like we do. And so their roots spread out trying to find water underground, okay? And that's a dicotyledon. Now, a monocotyledon is a bit different, okay? And it all comes down to the leaf identifying it, okay? So, like your dicotyledon leaf had all these different veins in it, a monocotyledon leaf doesn't, okay? So, here I've got an example of a monocotyledon, and this time I do actually have a flowering one, okay? So, if you don't know, this is an orchid. Orchids are the biggest group of monocotyledons, okay? Most monocotyledons are orchids, and so this is a flower, obviously looking a lot better than my drawing of it. And so for this to reproduce, a bee would come inside here into the flower or something else, try and get some nectar, and then little bits of this would rub off on the bee, and then when it flew to another flower it would leave those on it, and that would help the flower reproduce, okay? But we want to look at the leaves, okay? These are the more interesting bits, and these are what tell us if it's monocotyledon or dicotyledon. So let's look at this leaf here, okay? Now, you can see straight away it doesn't have that same pattern on it. Let's get the other one back, okay? So here, we've got that line going up the middle and lots of lines off to the side. Here, we actually do have a line going up the middle, but there's no lines coming off to the side. And if we sort of zoom in on it, you might be able to faintly see that there is lines on it, but they're all going straight like this. They're all going in the same direction as that one in the middle, okay? And that's the difference between them. That's what makes it a monocotyledon, is all these veins in the leaf are all going parallel to each other. This plant is actually looking a little bit dusty. That's unfortunate. So let's pop that out of the way, and then let's look at doing a sketch of one of these. Okay. Another example of a monocotyledon are plants like your flowering grasses and things. So if any of you go past the hotel in Struntian on your way to school, or when walking the dog or something, it's got some big flowering grasses outside of it with like these sort of tufty things on the end. They're monocotyledons as well. Okay, so the example of one of them I'm going to draw is going to be like one of those grasses, okay? So you'd have your long stem coming up the middle, okay? And so I'm not going to draw the orchid because I'll struggle, okay? And you'd have leaves coming off the side like this on one of those grasses, wouldn't you? Okay, like this. And then on the top, you might have a big sort of tufty thing, okay? And though they don't look like it, they're not all the colours, and they don't have the same sort of petals we see on lots of things. This little bit at the top, they are the flowers of that plant, okay? So this bit up here, they are the flowers. And then your leaf here will just have lots of lines going through it, okay? So, what I'm going to do actually is going to draw a bit of a zoomed in version of the leaves, okay? Because that, like I said, is the easiest way of telling them apart. Okay, so here we've got a leaf of a Dicotyledon, this going up. And it's got the veins running this way, okay? What we'd say really there is it has like a network of veins in it, okay? We'll say network of veins. It means it's sort of covering a lot of it in different directions, okay? Then, for our monocotyledon, these are normally thin leaves, okay? Quite narrow leaves, especially on the grass. Even that orchid I was showing you, its leaves are quite long and narrow, okay? And in here, the veins all run in the same direction. They all run parallel, okay? There's none going off in other directions, okay? So here we have parallel veins. Right, that's where we're going to finish this video, okay? So, we've got our Dicotyledons, leaves that look like this with veins on them, and we've got our Monocotyledons, leaves that look like this with veins going all parallel to each other. And that's our two types of flowering plants. Okay, so it doesn't matter if it's Monocotyledon or Dicotyledon, they still have flowers, they still have leaves, and they still reproduce through these flowers. Okay, right, so I hope you understood everything in there. If not, you know how to get in touch with me. Thank you for watching.